It's very non-C++-ish to say, if X is equal to true, return true, else return false. You would just say return X. And similarly, certain kinds of constructs around ifs, where all you're doing is setting the value of a single variable, they set some C++ developers' teeth on edge, and they prefer to use immediate if. So this isn't wrong. If, whatever, result equals 7, else result equals 302. The compiler will like it. It'll execute just fine. There's no speed hit from doing it, but many people prefer to use this notation. Results equal to something, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it, 7. And then the colon you can pronounce else, 302. These mean exactly the same thing. If something evaluates to true, result will get set to 7. If something evaluates to false, result will get set to 302. And it just takes a single line instead of 4 lines to kind of get your expression across. There's no constraints on what you can put in there. You could say 7, but you could also call some big long function. You can say 302, but you could again call some big long function. You have calculations, whatever you want. As a best practice, it's more readable if at least one of them is just a simple literal, but you can use the same kinds of things that you could use if you wrote it out the long way. It's simply a matter of syntax. Simple demo for immediate if. To make it not entirely trivial, I also thought I'd show you another idiom for the let's keep going until someone enters their signal value to quit. I showed you before with the switch, we first prompted the person, enter a number, then we went into the loop, and then we did the prompting again at the bottom of the loop. The other possibility is to put the prompting in the loop, then you have to initialize the variable to what we call a signal value, something that will make sure you go into the loop. So here we're setting X to 99 and then saying while it's greater than 0, which of course it will be for sure the first time, then we can go through and process our number. There's some other ways to move the test to the end, but you'll see this pattern fairly often, and sometimes people are confused. They're like, you set it to 99, then you immediately checked whether it was greater than 0. Of course it's greater than 0. Yes, but you'll be guaranteed there'll be some code inside the loop that will change it. And that way you're going to go into the loop at least once, but you don't know how many times. That's the while part. Here's the immediate if part. Here's the question mark. So we're declaring a string, which we're calling sign, and we're giving it the value all in this single line of code. We're saying, is X greater than 0? And you don't pronounce it. That's what the question mark's supposed to help you do. Is X greater than 0? If it is, sign will end up saying positive. If it's not, then sign will end up saying 0 or negative. Then we're just going to print out your number is and that string variable sign. Easy enough. Let's run this one a couple times. So if I say 55, your number is positive. Excellent. Minus 11, your number is 0 or negative, and then it's done. It's a very simple little thing. Mostly what it is people say, what? Where did this question mark come from? Or why is there a colon in the middle of this statement? Now you know that's an immediate if. C++ flow of control expressions really aren't that complicated, but you can build really complicated applications out of them. The existence of an if, of a loop of some kind, that's common throughout languages. Maybe different languages call them different things, but they all pretty much exist. If you are muddled up a little bit on where do the brace brackets go, how come sometimes I have to have them, sometimes I don't, remember the compiler is your friend. So in the for loop, the 3 parts are separated with semicolons. If you separate them with something else, you'll get a message saying that some of them are missing. You'll have to sort of interpret that, oh, because I don't have semicolons, it thinks this is all just the initializer, and it's yelling me about the other pieces not being there. Typically, commas is what people do wrong there. Switch your commas to semicolons, and your error message will go away. Same if you leave out your braces or some other part of the syntax of your switch statement. You can build a for loop with a while. You saw that they were pretty much interchangeable. You can build a switch out of a bunch of ifs and elses. You can certainly build an immediate if out of an if and an else. And in fact, especially if you were to drag the dreaded goto into the mix, you could get by without any one of them, replacing them with the others instead. So use them in the way that's most readable and in the way that most C++ developers use them. So for example, if you know how many times you're going to go through a loop, you should use for. It's for int I equals 0, I is less than 10, increment I by 1. That's just a common or garden loop. You can do it with a while, but people would think you were kind of strange. When you don't know how many times you're going to go through in advance because you're processing a whole file or you're keeping going till the user presses 0, use a while. The compiler couldn't care less which you use, but humans who read your code do. Should you use a switch or a bunch of ifs? As soon as there's more than 3 possibilities, or even really 3, go with a switch. If there's just 2, don't make a switch for just 2. That's kind of weird. That's like an if and it's else, right? You don't need that. Should you use an immediate if? Well, the minute your immediate if has to span multiple lines, you're probably doing it wrong, right? The whole point of an immediate if was that it took that 4-line construct and turned it into a 1-line construct. If your conditions and your values that you're setting the variable to are so long that the whole thing has to be broken up with line breaks, it should probably be a regular if. We also talked about functions, about free functions and member functions, taking parameters by value or by reference and returning by value or by reference. The demos I've showed you where all the parameters and return types are things like integers. You know what? Just always do it by value. But there will be times when taking by reference is appropriate, and you've seen the syntax now, that capital 7, that ampersand, after the type, integer reference. You could also have string reference or person reference. We just didn't happen to demo them. Functions are what your application is built of. Functions and classes. Your functions are built out of these flow of control constructs, out of loops, out of conditionals, out of checking to see if something is found or done or good enough or needs special handling. You're almost completely versed in all of the C++ syntax and ready to start putting this all into action.